I'm in their wedding album. It was crazy. And after every picture I took, it was like E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles. And my son, I just remember my son like watching it like, what is going on here?
All right, well, Rob, Nick, I guess the first question is, like, has this sunk in yet for you guys? This is obviously the pinnacle for both of you, kind of your career and everything else. Either of you guys can start. Has this sunk in for you?
You got it.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, shoot, it better have by this point, right? That we're here, we're working, and we're a month through camp. So, but once you start doing all the football things, I think it's just business as usual. So, yeah, it's sunk in because you got to do more a little bit, but it's football, and it's trying to get the team better every day.
You know, it's the same. You're so busy with day-to-day operations. You just kind of you learn to go with the flow. There's every once in a while there's a little reminder, whether it's from my kids or it's like, man, we're actually here. Like last week in Green Bay for me and Matt LaFleur, just from where we've been. There's little moments that remind you, and but it's humbling, but it's awesome too.
You guys have coached and you guys are around the same age, so you guys have had nearly 20 years as coaches. What's the biggest difference being the guy in charge?
I've always said that it's like all of a sudden you just got a little bit more on your plate, but you don't stop doing the things that got you to this position, right? So I like to think of myself as an expert in quarterback play and wide receiver play. I can't stop doing that once I became a coordinator, right? And then you think of yourself as an expert in offensive play, and you don't want to stop that once you get to your head coaching spot. So you're just adding more hats, I think, to say, but you got to be able to delegate and trust the guys that you hired. But I just think like the best thing that I get to do every day is coach players, and I just don't want that to stop just because of the head coach title.
Well, how much of it then is like wanting to do what got you here, right? Like, because you know what got you here. It's what you guys did on offense in Indy, what you guys did on defense in San Francisco, and balancing that with this is actually a completely different job.
Yeah, it's no different than what he said. You keep grinding. Like for me, the worst position to coach in our building is linebackers, and it's I'm in his room all the time. But and then Albrecht, I'm with him all the time. But at the same time, you've got to be able to trust those guys because you are going to get pulled away, and you can't dedicate as much attention to the detail that you want. But at the same time, you're straining guys to keep that detail, and you're staying as connected as possible. But you are being pulled in many directions, but it doesn't make it an impossible task. It just makes it a little more tedious more than anything.
Are there times, like I've heard first-year head coaches say, like there are times where I have to shut my door because something's going to come across my desk at all times of the day, and I've heard guys use this strategy before. There's going to be a window every day where I'm going to close my door and just make myself unavailable for an hour and a half to do the work I need to do. Like, have you guys like sort of incorporated like there has to be times when I can't be available to everybody?
There is. I mean, if that door's open, someone's walking through there. I promise.
Yeah.
And which is welcome. For us, we always want to welcome people to walk in and talk about whatever's on their mind. But at the same time, there's moments, and I would imagine it's going to become even more so now that we're getting closer to game planning, where that door's got to close and you got to focus on the opponent so you can do what's best for the players, and that's get them ready for Sunday.
And I'm still laughing about his linebacker coach and his struggles, and I think the same thing with our
being the Eagles
quarterback coach and wide receiver coach, and yeah, they get picked on a little bit. So, but hey, they know what it is and they know what they signed up for.
How do you guys handle the guys on the other side of the ball? I've always been sort of interested in that because, I think naturally, like you said, you'd gravitate towards offensive players in general, maybe quarterbacks and receivers in particular, you to defensive players in general, linebackers in particular. How do you kind of try to make sure you're interacting with the defensive players and you make sure you're interacting with the offensive players?
I've always felt like I've had a good relationship with DBs just because that interaction and the one-on-ones and there. So I continue to do that. And I think the thing that you can do with the players and the coaches is just explain it from the offensive side of view. In my case, like, hey, here's what I'm seeing with you guys doing that on offense, and here's why you can't do that, or here's why this is really good of what you're doing because an offense is looking at this. And so, you're just able to have those I think when you're a coordinator, or you're a wideout coach or a quarterback coach, and you go and tell a DB something, and you're like, hey, what are you doing? But like as the head coach, you're allowed to do that. So I feel like I've had more of those conversations just because I feel like I've been able to help them in some sense of what an offense is thinking, or what a wideout's thinking, or what a quarterback's thinking.
Yeah, you got the quarterback now, like where maybe the most important draft pick you'll ever make is right there.
It is. So it's the same thing. You're having conversation. You know, Zach came into my office a couple weeks ago, and he goes into everyone's office on defense just to ask about scheme, and we had a great discussion about our scheme and how we play 3 deep compared to how other teams play 3 deep, and just going through all the different ways we teach man compared to how other teams teach man. And you know, so you want to have those interactions, but at the same time, understanding your voice might carry weight. You're very cognizant of making sure that offense isn't doing something just because you told them to do something. And to just make sure that you're constantly staying focused on the style that you want that side of the ball to represent, because sometimes we can get so caught up on scheme that we can forget about the details of what makes football special, and that's a style of play. And so just all those different conversations that happen, and maintaining the messaging, and at the same time not overloading the coordinator to a point where he feels like he's got to do something that doesn't flow with what they try to do schematically.
Last stop for both you guys, you were working with first-time head coaches, you with Frank in Indianapolis, you with Kyle in San Francisco. So I'm just curious if there's one thing that you guys have maybe already noticed, I took this from him.
For me, it's you know, the delegation of and understanding. It's really the way for Kyle, to be honest with you, the way he handles the other side of the ball. I think I've taken that from him. The way he handled me and the conversations that we had, and the way he was very careful and very cognizant of the words that he spoke, and the things that he gave us to help us evolve on defense because it allowed us to flow a lot easier. But I thought his leadership skills were phenomenal, and I feel like that's the best part that I've taken so far.
So in a way, it's like you want your relationship with Mike to be similar to
Very
his relationship with you.
Yeah, very similar.
And for you?
I just think Frank had a great ability of connecting with everybody in the building, and that, you know, the offensive guys, the defensive guys, the offense coaches, defense coaches, but then everybody else around the building, right? I just think that he just had a great way about him as the leader of the organization, and I saw that, and I was, you know, I feel like I've said this before, like I got my master's degree or doctorate degree on how to treat, you know, as a leader, how to treat everybody in the building, and he was just a great example of that for everybody. And his messaging to the team. I always thought his messaging to the team was, he knew what he wanted to get across, he knew how to get it across, and the team really, I just felt like the team always embraced his messaging, and that's what you heard them talking about a lot of the time.
So you guys are both coming into pretty intense markets. I would say you into New York, biggest market in the country, you into Philly, which I know other coaches who've been there, it feels like it's the biggest market, the way the Eagles are covered. Can you already feel the difference? You coming from the West Coast, you coming from the Midwest, and what it's like in the markets that you're going into?
For us, I called Kyle on my first press conference here. I had like 15 other things lined up. I said, hey Kyle, when you had your press conference, how many more interviews? Like 1 or 2. And I was like, man, I just feel like every day is, which is good, you know, but it's a little more demanding than other coaches. It isn't anything that we can't handle, but I just being in different stops, it's definitely more demanding.
I just see the passion of the fan base, and there's a demand for it, right? And so, you know, it's awesome, because I feel like I've been at one place in particular, like, it was like you had more fans in the stands from the other team than you did for that team, and you're like practicing crowd noise in a home game. But and so I love the passion of our fan base, and you can see why we have so many media members, because there's a demand by the city of Philadelphia, which I think is awesome.
I had Mike Tomlin say to me he can't go to the grocery store. He hasn't been to the grocery store in 10 years. You guys, I would assume, could live like relatively anonymous lives, you in San Francisco, you in Indianapolis. Have you had that moment where it's like, I don't know if I can go this place or that place anymore?
Well, I had a moment that I've shared with I thought I shared it with our local media. I'm on vacation at the Jersey Shore, and we're at the end of the day in the beach. It's like 7 o'clock, and there's a wedding going on.
Yeah.
And the one guy stops me like, hey, coach, can you stay here for a second? I'm gonna go get the wedding party. He was a groomsman, and I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm in there for 20 minutes taking pictures with everybody in the wedding, everybody in the wedding party. The bride. I'm in their wedding album. It was crazy, and after every picture I took, it was like EAGLES, Eagles. And my son, I just remember my son like watching it, like, what is going on here? So again, that's just the passion of the fan base that I've grown to like, and I understand we're 0-0 right now. So and that, you know, however
Things
that
are
goes,
good now.
yeah, they love everything. Everything's great right now. So, but I also know that it could go the other way. But it's been nothing but positive on my part.
Anything for you?
No, you know what? I'm gonna hit the same thing. It's been the world's greatest honeymoon, and everything's been great. Great reception. They've been wonderful for the family, and we're undefeated. But we just got to keep it rolling.
Last thing from me then. Best piece of advice you guys got, each of you got going into this job?
The best piece of advice I got is like, hey, you're gonna have to make decisions every day. And sometimes you're gonna make the right decisions, and sometimes you're gonna make the wrong decisions. And when you make those wrong decisions, own it and move forward. And you can't dwell on it. You just got to keep moving forward and get better from it.
Yeah, the best advice I got was Gary Kubiak. When I first got hired, he was on the phone and he said, hey, Rob, one piece of advice I can give you is it'll get done. And it took me a minute to understand what he was talking about, and it was that first day where I just had a stack of stuff on my desk, a to-do list that seemed like 10 pages long, and hey, it'll get done. Stay within yourself, stay within the process, trust your decision making, and trust that eventually you'll get to that bottom of the stack and just make good, sound decisions as you go through it. But never get overwhelmed. Just stay within the moment and trust that it'll get done.
All right, Robert Saleh, first-year coach of the Jets. Nick Sirianni, first-year coach of the Eagles. Appreciate the time, fellas.
Thank you.